So this is going to be a 4-part series in how to build a delay line in Max for Live. So I've got a new session open here in Ableton. And so the first thing we'll want to do is just have some kind of sound source so we can hear what we're working on. So you could simply, grab a sample out of the sound file library, for instance, like maybe a tambourine sound, for instance. Whoops. Tambourine. So I could just plop that into an audio track if I want to do that, and just repeat that. Alternatively, you could also just go into your instruments. Now it appears that I don't have any instruments, and that's because I'm searching for a tambourine or a tamb, and so it's not seeing anything. So just make sure I turn that off. Now I can see all my instruments again. So that is really important to remember. This happens a lot with students or people who are beginning working with Ableton. They do a search and then they go to another folder in their browser and they're like, why is all my stuff gone? So keep that in mind. I'm just going to grab a sampler into this MIDI track. So again, if this first track was a MIDI track, this is just an audio track. And now I can do the same thing, but now with a simpler instrument. So I can grab that same percussion hit there, and now what I can do is just create a new clip and see what that does. Cool, and that's nice because it just loops. So the problem with this one here is that if I loop it, I have to turn on warping and then loop. That's a little bit obnoxious and a little bit too fast. So you'd either need to stretch this out and make it longer, so make the length longer, or it's just so much easier to just do a simpler instrument. And now I have a long time between hits, and that'll be a little bit easier to hear our different delays. So what I'll do is just double click here now to see the device view area. And so now what I'm going to do is build a Max for Live object, and we're going to build an effect. So I'm going to go to my Max for Live folder, and so we have audio effect, instrument, or MIDI effect. So I'm just going to grab this first Max audio effect and drag it into this track, and there we go. And again, if I wanted to do it into this track, there's nothing here, and that's okay, right? Because this is just an audio track. So I could also do the same and drag it here, and so now our Max audio effect would appear here. I'll build it in the simpler track for now. So in fact, I'm going to delete this track just so it's not confusing. Okay. So, and of course, here's our simpler instrument. And so when we're dealing with a MIDI instrument or a software instrument, our effect is always going to come after it. In fact, it won't even let me drag the effect before it. So that's kind of nice. All right. So the next step is to actually start building our delay line. So, and again, if you're a little bit new to Max for Live, we've got, so the difference between a Max for Live object and just, or device versus just a normal device in Ableton, for instance, let me grab an audio effect like a auto filter, right, is that we can see we have this save preset button here and also the hot swap button. So those exist here as well. But then we also have this little additional button here, which is, this is the edit button to go into edit mode in Max for Live. I'm going to get rid of the auto filter. And now click on this to start Max for Live. This Max console may or may not appear. I'll get rid of it for now. If you need to see it again, you can just go under the window and under Max. So I'm in Max now, and just bring up the Max console again. This is sometimes handy for a troubleshooting a patch, but we won't worry about that for now. So I'm going to just grab this corner and bring it out a little bit so we have more area to work. So again, if you're new to Max for Live, this area on the top where this is kind of, this says device vertical limit, right? This area corresponds to the area down here in this device view. So eventually what we're going to do is, as we build our patch, we're going to put the objects that we need to see in a session will be all placed up in here. So in general, what I do is I just grab all this stuff, bring it down here, and then afterwards we're going to just bring up the objects in our presentation view and place them up in this area so we only see those. And I'm going to talk about the difference between presentation and edit view. Or patching view, sorry. So I've just grabbed, so I'm going to grab this plug out. So we have a plug in tilde and a plug out tilde. The tilde means it's a max MSP object, meaning it handles audio signal. So any object that has a tilde at the end of it in max means that it handles audio. If it doesn't, then it's going to be just a regular MIDI or math object. I'm going to click on this and delete it. So right now our signal is going from plug in to plug out. So what we want to do is we're going to build our delay line right in this area. So a few max editing basics is there's a little lock button here, which once the patch is locked, I can't edit anything. But now I can try things out, for instance. So usually when I finish my patch, I'm going to lock it. So I'm going to unlock it to edit it. And then a few little things over here. There's something called this little, looks like a camera. This is now, we're in patching mode. And if I click on this, it now puts us in presentation mode. And you can see we need to assign things into presentation mode. So I'm going to show you that in a little bit. So let's go back to patching mode. Okay. And so to build a delay line, it's actually very easy. So to create any kind of new object in this area, this working area, I can just simply double click with my mouse and we get a blank object. Or what I can also do, if I just select it and delete, if I just tap somewhere with my mouse and then hit the N as in name, now a new blank object shows up here. And if I just start typing a letter, say B. Now these are all the different objects that start with B. And so the object we're going to use to build a delay line, there's actually two we need, something called TapIn and TapOut. So TAP. So here's the TapIn object. So I'll click on that or double click on it. And then I'm going to click down here and hit N and now get the TapOut object. So the way TapIn and TapOut work is TapIn is basically like a buffer that holds a certain amount of audio. And then the TapOut actually handles the delay time, how far, how long the delay will actually be. I find this is a little bit confusing for people, but basically, we get control over how large of a buffer we can hold. And then we can change what part of that buffer we're going to send into the, out into the world. So the delay this time can never be more than the buffer size. So for right now, I'm just going to click in here, hit space, and then write 1,000 that's 1,000 milliseconds. So that's an argument. So now we're holding a second of audio. I'm going to connect TapIn to TapOut, and then I'm going to click here on the TapOut, go to the end of the name, hit space, and I'm going to write 50 milliseconds for now. So that's a default argument. So if we don't do anything else, if I just connect this to here, and I'm going to just for right now make this mono. So I'm going to take left and right and send it out to the left and right. And so now if I go back, so let me actually save this for now. So I'm going to go File and Save. And so the default is to put this in the max audio effect folder in my user library. So I'll show you that in a minute. So you can see these are all the different delays or objects, max live objects I've created. So I'll call this, my awesome delay, and hit save. All right, cool. And so now if I go, let me just go back into Ableton. So I'll close this window and play this. So you can hear we have that little 50-second delay. Let me just turn this off. So there's without the delay and with the delay. All right. So, and again, to just review, this is stored. If I need to, let's say, grab this patch and put it, now you'll notice that we can't see anything here. That's because I haven't put anything into presentation view yet. So, but to just show you where this is stored, I go to my user library, I go to presets. This is an audio effect, and I'm going to go to my Max for Live audio effects and open up this. And sure enough, there is my awesome delay. So if I wanted to drag this into another track, whoops, I didn't want to do that. I could just drag it into an empty area here, and now it creates a new audio track with the My Awesome Delay patch. I'll delete that. I'll delete the track. Let's go back to here. So let's continue editing, because what we want to be able to do is change the delay time, and that's pretty easy to do. So I'll just do this, and now I'm back in editing my patch. So we want to change this time. There's a couple ways we can do this. One, we can just use a number box or a float number. There's a few different objects that deal with numbers. So if we actually, let's see, these are stored, I think, up here as well. So if way up here on the top, this is also a place, if I just click on here, it just creates a new object. So this is my object. This is a message box, a comment box. There's a toggle box, a bunch of buttons, and some numbers. So let me click on this, and I can see that there is a number box, a float number box, and then a signal number box. Okay, so these two are Max objects, and this is a Max MSP object. So if I just do a number box, right, now this will send out a number of milliseconds to this. So if I just click on this and drag it to there, and now I lock the patch, what I can do is, as I adjust this, this will override whatever my preset is. Okay, so now it would do a delay of 139 milliseconds. So just to show this, I'm going to unlock the patch. I'm going to put this number box up here. I'm going to, well, here, actually, let me show you a different way to do this. So I'm going to click on this, and if I click on it and then go over here and click on the inspector box, what I can do is I can go on the top here. So if I have all selected, there's something that says include in presentation. So I'm going to click on that. And so now this object will be included in the presentation when I lock it. I can close up this window now. And what I'm going to do is now go to presentation mode. And so now I can see this. I'm going to drag it up here and then lock. And so now I'm going to hit save. Close this up for now. And so now I'm back here, and oh no, it didn't save it. What's going on? Let's just see. Oh, I forgot one important step. And that's that I have to actually, so let me unlock this patch again. And if I just now, while I'm in either presentation or patching mode, doesn't matter. If I just kind of click here in this area here, if I click on an object and then hit the I button, right, I'm going to get the inspector information for that object. So, but if I want to just have the inspector information for the whole patch, I can just click somewhere in here. And then if I hit this little P button up here, now this is for the whole patch here. What I need to do is scroll all the way down to the bottom. I can see that there is open in presentation, and I want to make sure I click on this. And now what will happen is, so now I can close this, and if I hit save, every time this patch opens now, it'll open up in presentation mode. And you can see in my, if I move this out of the way here a little bit, that this has changed now, right? So you can kind of see it's a little bit grayed out there. So let me just close this up for now, go back into Max, not Max, into Ableton. And so now I've got this button I can move. Whoops, I hit the wrong thing. I hit this little edit button. So now if I turn on my delay, or I turn on my clip, and I can change the delay time. All right, so now there's some great objects. So let me go back into Max for Live here, go back into patching mode. So rather than using this number box, what I can also do is there are some great max for live objects that we can use for this. So if I click over here, just tap and hit N and start typing live, anything that starts with a live dot is a max for live object. And there's for this first one called live dial is really handy because you'll see it actually looks like a dial, right? It's reminiscent of like the dials that are down here, for instance, in the simpler object. So it actually looks like a Ableton object, which is really fantastic. And so now if I use this instead of the number box, right? And what's really nice about this is if you have, let's say, a MIDI controller or a knob, then it'll convert MIDI data, for instance, like 0 to 127 to whatever milliseconds the dial is set at. So let me show you what that means. So for right now, so I'm going to delete this other number box for now. And so if I lock the patch actually, and I hit this, so you can see the default is to go from 0 to 127. So right now it's set to be just a basic MIDI dial. So if I connected, if a MIDI mapped, let's say a mod wheel or something like that to it, the mod wheel would go from 0 to 127. So what I want to do is I want to change this so it's actually doing milliseconds, and I want to go between, let's say, 0 or some number, and the maximum would be 1,000 because that's my maximum buffer here for the tap-in. So let me unlock the patch. I'm going to click on Live Dial and then go to the inspector again. And so we're going to change a few little things. One is we want to give it a kind of unique name. So what I do is, in general, so you can see, so the long name of the, this is the long name of the parameter. This name must be unique per patch hierarchy. So what'll happen is if I start creating a few of these, I'm just option click dragging, and you see that if I look at the name, this is Live Dial, and then this next one is, let me go down here, you can see it automatically changed the long name. And so in general, you don't need to worry about this. Max kind of takes care of this. But what I'd like to do is actually change the name of this thing right here, this live.dial, and actually have it be what this is. And this is a delay time, right? We're gonna affect delay time. So if I use the short name here, right? This is the short name of the parameter. This is the name used for display in the user interface. Great. So I want to change this. So I'm going to double click. I'm going to say delay time. Great. And if I just click over here, now you can see, and if I make this a little bit bigger, I can see that. Let me get rid of these other two now. So I've changed the name. I'm going to keep the type be float. And then in terms of the modulation mode, well, this will keep the same, but we want to go down here to unit style. And right now it's set to int. And I want to click on this, and you can see there's a whole bunch of different options: int, float, time, frequency. So if we actually set this to time, now it'll show us a time in milliseconds, which is fantastic. That's exactly what we want. And the last thing we want to do is change the range. And instead of going from 0 to 127, let's go from 1. So 1 dot to space 1,000. And by doing the dot, that'll make sure it's a float, because the type we're doing is a float. You could also just do it as an int as well. Let's see if this will work. Looks like an int is somehow limited to 256. So I'll go back, I'll make this back to float and make it 1,000. Okay, so now when I adjust, so I have to lock the patch, and I can adjust my time from 1 millisecond all the way to 1 second or 1,000 milliseconds. All right, cool. So there's my delay time. And the last thing I just need to do is I'm going to click on, let's see, I'm going to unlock the patch, click on this, and make sure I go up to the top here and include in presentation. So now this object will be included in the presentation mode. I'm going to go to presentation mode and now move the delay time up here. So now I can see it in the window. I'll lock the patch. I will hit save. And now close this up. And so now I have a nice little dial here that I can change the delay time with. All right, so that's step one. Next, what we'll want to do is actually add some feedback to this so we can add an echo effect. So that's going to be part 2 of this series.